You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. And available right here on SouthamptonDelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show. And no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show a part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. And finally, we have a home win to talk about. The first time since April, the first time all season, we finally got over the line at home and gave the fans, I guess we'll say, a little bit of a performance, something to talk about positively. So not all positive, of course. If you watched any of the match, you saw a pretty dour 45 minutes of football. You saw us go behind by conceding a goal from an error again in defense. Just things that shouldn't necessarily happen. But to talk about all that this week is Alan Gunn from St. Mary's Musings. And you can follow him at @A_Gunzy on Twitter. You can also follow St. Mary's Musings. You can get all of Alan's matchday tweets there at St. Mary's Musings. And Alan likes to have a lot of fun. Alan is a joy to talk to. He will talk about his being around sports and the way he approaches things. So if you enjoy that part of it, be sure to follow along. St. Mary's Musings would be a good place for you to get your opinions on Saints, because you'll get lots of opinion pieces there. And the links to everything are in the show notes, from the Twitter account to the website to Alan himself is all there. But it is a win nonetheless, a big win in a big week where Saints are going to face another test, I guess, midweek at home, where they'll need to put in yet another performance for going away to one of the longest trips of the season, up to Newcastle, where we haven't had very good luck as of late. But we'll see how that all works out. So, of course, Alan and I did talk about the win. We are excited about the win, but there's still plenty of other things that need discussing. We will kind of pick things apart, because I think that's what we do. Maybe we overcompensate and try not to be too overly optimistic moving forward. But anyway, I hope that you enjoy it kind of nonetheless. But it was an enjoyable conversation, though, I must say. And if this is not an enjoyable listen at this moment, it's because I'm not at home. There have been some things that have happened since we recorded with Alan that mean I'm not sitting in the normal spot doing the normal thing. We're trying to get this out before we do actual serious stuff. So don't worry, everybody is fine. We'll be okay. Just needed to go, I guess. I don't know if that's too much information or what. Anyway, moving on. Enjoyable conversations are always good, and I got to have one of those with everybody from the Total Saints podcast that you can get. So it's out now. It came out on Monday morning, but special thanks to Ben, Lucy, and Glenn for putting up with me. Special thanks to Steve for going on vacation and allowing me to fill in. I hope that you enjoy that show. If you haven't listened yet, there you go, I guess. Anyway, links to that, of course, are also in the show notes. A special thanks to Ben for having me on once again. So anyway, I think that about wraps it up, except for the FA Cup draw that has happened since we last recorded, and we drew Huddersfield at home, which is exciting to no one. So there's that. We will play that match in January. That will be great. I'm sure, hopefully, we win and we move on and draw somebody exciting. But until then, we can only do so much. So that said, let's jump into the episode now. I feel like I'm rambling and I need to go. So enjoy the episode. I'll talk to you on the other side. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it. So I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Alan Gunn. You can find him on Twitter at @A_Gunzy, and you can get his tweets at St. Mary's Musings. Alan, thanks for joining the show again, and nice to talk to you.
Thank you for having me back, and shout out to my editor, Jake Hughes, for tipping for me to come back.
Yeah, for having
some sort of commitment he had on, and he's like, go get Alan. And I was like, gladly, I would gladly do that. Keep it in the St. Mary's Musings family. It's way easier and way better. And I'm way happy to talk to you again, because you haven't been on the show by yourself. I want to say it's last time I talked to you, I was in a hotel doing some sort of like weird school thing. And it was it was stressful for me to like have to do it there. The guy that was in charge of me was not super stoked that I was staying up editing audio instead of doing what I probably should have been doing, but it's okay. We're still here.
Yeah, I think I was like a last minute call up again.
We gotta stop having you do that. I feel like I'm relying on you a lot.
I like it. I feel like I'm getting a call up to the first team here. Someone needs me.
Good. I mean, as long as you come in and perform, I guess it's okay.
Hopefully.
But you have to be wondering, when do you nail down a starting spot? Because
I'm like squad number like 28.
the only shirt I have a squad number on is 43. And
43.
Yeah. It shows you where I'm at people's lives.
Yeah.
But I mean, just in case people don't know what St. Mary's Musings is, like what would people expect if they showed up on the website or followed along on game day for at the Twitter account?
Well, if you look us up on SB Nation, you're going to get a lot of opinion pieces. That's kind of our thing, opinion pieces. And then if you go to the tweets, you're going to get a lot of jokes and not a whole lot of seriousness, because I'm not a serious guy when it comes to football. I like to enjoy it. Yeah.
And you do a lot of the match day tweets, right?
Yeah, do them all. When sometimes it's from a car, sometimes we're having to travel, so I'm having to double duty, watch it on the phone and then switch over to the Twitter. So we get it done though.
That's right. And you and Jake have encouraged me not to be so serious sometimes, which is nice. I need that every once in a while. I tried to do something funny on Twitter, and then I got copyright smacked, and my account was locked. So that was cool.
Which one was that? What did you get copyright for?
So I took the James Ward-Prowse free kick from yesterday from the.
Oh, you got copyright account from the because he put what's his face, little Yoda.
Yeah. So it was like James Ward-Prowse taking the free kick, Yoda, steering it in, and then the ball going in, and it was like 3.5 seconds in gift, and usually that's safe. I know I can't do a video, but I figured the GIF was fine, and I woke up this morning only to find it was copyright struck, and then my account was locked. I had to read through a bunch of stuff and click around, and then got my account back. But I guess that's the end of it for me.
Yoda's a big no-no apparently. That's they've been really coming down hard on Yoda for some reason.
Yeah. I feel like it's like that meme that's going around where it's the two guys, like big strong guys, like shaking hands or holding hands in the middle, and it's like the Premier League and Disney, like copyright striking literally everything together.
They are.
So it made me mad, but whatever. It was I guess by the letter of the law was a copyright violation similar to a handball we had yesterday, but doesn't mean you have to call it every time. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
But let's get into this, because obviously going into yesterday, we're coming into a huge week of matches, and hosting Watford at home. They're coming bottom of the table. It's a team we need to pick up points against, but it's at home and we haven't done well. I mean, the last home win we have is what, going all the way back to April of last year, and before that I think it was March. So not a great record, only 1 point at home so far. But I mean, coming in the match yesterday, I would imagine that you were like everybody else and just saying that we have to take a win here, right? We have to take 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. These next two matches, the next kind of run of fixtures here is the cliched 6 pointers, and tick the box off Watford here. And I think the biggest thing was seeing how we responded from the Arsenal match, whether it was carryover or whatever. I think that was probably the biggest point that I wanted to see going in. And I think I said somewhere along the line, especially after Watford had scored, that if we came in expecting us to play exactly as we did against Arsenal, you'd be sorely disappointed, because obviously we play completely different against top six versus everyone else, and I think that was the most interesting point going in for me, was how we were actually going to use that confidence, if there was any, because granted we still blew 2 leads against Arsenal.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I was saying last week, I was not happy, but I was okay with the fact that we blew the lead going for the win. We didn't just try to sit back and soak up pressure, because I think we're much better going forward, much better kind of the pressing from the front. And I think if we look at the lineup from yesterday, that's kind of what we try to do again. But we're so inconsistent that it's hard to say and know that we're going to come into a game and be ready for it and really take it to the other team. But it's one of those things. I guess that's just where we're at as a club and as a team, and it won't turn around probably soon. It's going to take I don't know if it's several months more with the manager or several more transfer windows or whatever it is, but we're just lacking in some areas. But let's look at the lineup. I mean, largely I think unchanged from what we had seen against Arsenal, except for Armstrong comes out, and I think that means Djenepo starts. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that's what the change was. But I mean, for you, anybody in there that looking at the lineup to start that you would have wanted to see changed around, or maybe a different formation or anything like that, or are you pretty happy with how the team was laid out?
I mean, I thought it was quite a surprise when Obafemi was actually in the squad for Arsenal, and then how he obviously retained his spot, which was the biggest surprise, I think, just based on the fact that he's coming back into the team from injury. He's been out so much this year, and pretty much throughout his first team career, he just seems to get injured quite often, unluckily, with hamstrings and quads and the sort. So you never know what the timetable of recovery is for him on that. But looking at him, he was probably the biggest surprise. But I don't know if you bring in Buffal for him. That would be the only, I guess, not knock. I'm not even calling it a knock. That would be the only change that you maybe would make. But I think people seem to think that Buffal is better off the bench. As that kind of impact sub, which we obviously saw in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only thing I would say for Obafemi is some of the comments that Ralph has made about him in the past, about his body and needing to kind of grow up and mature a little bit. And then he made similar comments this week. And I guess the way I read that was that's a knock against Obafemi. Like, he's still not quite there. Sometimes I follow him on Instagram, and you see the pictures, just like, hey man, like maybe tone it down, maybe post-date the picture, say, hey, this was, several weeks ago or whatever. Like, like you don't have to be out, but that said, he's a young man with a lot of money, and he, they have lives, they can go out. But I would just worry about that with him a little bit. So then I see him in the lineup, and I was a little bit shocked by that, especially because I didn't think he played that well against Arsenal for the most part. And I think large parts of yesterday he kind of went missing. But you start looking around the team, you look around the front line and things like that, and some of those players are so young, and Djenepo just seems like a wild card out on the right. Like, you're not sure what he's going to do. You're not sure where he's going to show up or be. And you could see there were a couple of times, I think yesterday, where Cedric was quite frustrated with him and about the runs he was making and the options he was giving for Cedric to be able to play the ball to him. So, oh well, like that's just how it goes when you got a guy like that. But he's, so creative and actually, like, driving at people that I'm not gonna fault him too much. So, I would say my only thing would be either Obafemi or perhaps Cedric. Like, I didn't think Cedric was great last week, and he didn't start the game great this time. And eventually, we'll get to the substitutions later, but gets hauled off for Valerie, which was awkward given we needed a goal and we brought on a right back. But I mean, I think the first thing that happened in the game straight from kickoff was that Cedric kind of gave the ball away with a really poor pass into the middle of defense, and Watford really should have been up 1-0 from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually an unsettling start, and I think really set the tone for the first half. If you look at that 45 minutes on the whole, I mean, we had the one chance towards the end of the half, but for the most part, we were on the back foot, despite having all the possession. I mean, I think what they said was at halftime we had 70% of the possession, something crazy like that, and if you actually watch the first half, I mean, it's like we did absolutely nothing in that first half, but I think, like you said, that just totally set the tone for what was going to happen.
Yeah, and I thought that, directly after that, maybe we settled down a little bit and had a decent kind of opening 10 minutes despite that little hiccup. But then after that, we just kind of fell apart, and it quickly turned into the forward movement wasn't quite there. We weren't making any kind of, we weren't making any runs. We weren't doing anything. We just had the ball, and that doesn't count for anything. We all know that. And, I think the fans very quickly started to kind of get on the team a little bit, started to boo the team a little bit as they went and passed the ball backwards. And I'm always going to worry about us only having, in that 4-2-2-2 system, or the 4-4-2 or the 4-3-3, whatever it is, like when you just have James Ward-Prowse and Højbjerg in the middle, like those guys are. I think James Ward-Prowse tends to struggle a little bit, but I also think that there are people ahead of him that need to provide the movement and make the runs and give him options. And when he doesn't have it, we are probably going to cycle the ball back and try to hold possession through. But I don't know. I thought that the physicality from the team was good early on. After that, nothing. We kind of just sat there and did nothing. And I think people, were right to boo the team going into halftime at down a goal, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we probably should have been. I think we've literally stolen, and sometimes you need to be lucky. In a relegation battle, sometimes you need to be lucky, and I think that we were very fortunate to be down just 1-0 at half, and because they easily could have been, like you say, goal in the first 5-10 minutes, and then obviously they get that goal that they need, just after the 20th minute mark, and easily Sarr could have scored again, and we could have been down 2-3-0 at halftime, and it's a completely different conversation that we're having right now. But I thought, for what we did in the first half, I thought we got away with a result, and sometimes you need to be lucky, which we were. Yeah.
And I think, between the 10th and the 20th minute, I think Watford settled in a little bit. They were now used to our press, and we had just basically, it looked like we had run out of ideas already, and that's not ever what you want to kind of feel. And then I was just thinking of, at one point they had a set piece, and I think Bednarak was called for a foul, and I'm looking at who's marking who, and then I'm just looking over at Genavo and Cedric and going, that is the weakest back post defense you could ever hope to have. Neither one of those guys I don't think are going to win anything in the air, and it just kind of it provided me with a little bit of worry. But they went close from that. They had a chance, and fortunate for us, it didn't happen. But the goal that we conceded, and it comes out of absolutely nothing. It's very clear that they have us for pace, if it against Bednarak or Stevens, and the throw in. And I don't know if it's Stevens who gets a foot to it and just hooks it backwards towards our own goal, or if it's the Watford player. But he's running through, and it's a good finish from him. Like, credit to I think it was, who was it? Is it Sarr?
It was Sarr, yeah.
I mean, yeah, credit to Sarr for putting that away. It was a great finish from him, but just unnecessary and poor positioning, I think, from us, and a poor decision to challenge for that ball initially. And then that means you're running behind him, and either if you bring him down, you're getting a red and you're getting sent off, or you just have to hope that he misses the target. But that was a good finish from them, and at that point, like, it was deflating, because we'd been good for 10 minutes or so. Watford was kind of come back into it, and then you just look at, like, now we just know that Watford's going to sit even deeper, and we don't look like a team that can actually break people down, but we do look vulnerable on the counterattack. So it kind of was setting up for Watford to kind of have the better run of play from there on out, I thought.
Yeah, I think when we go down, especially from a goal like that, I mean, that's one of those things. So, like, I guess going back to Arsenal, it feels like there's this air amongst everyone in the team that's just, what do we have to do to actually win a game? And giving up a goal like that, it's just like, here's another way it's gone wrong, where it's just, we've looked all right enough to still be in it, but then we've just given away, just such a cheap goal. And it's, at that point, I mean, heads could have dropped easily. And I mean, I think it was interesting to see how we sort of responded and not fully responded, because, I mean, like I said, we could have been down 2 or 3-0 at half after that. And I think Ralph really laid into him at halftime, which is what I'm hoping he did.
Yeah, and you just wonder, like, why does it take that for the guys to actually show up, and be around and aware of the situation? Like, it's not hard to look at the table and realize, like, hey, these are two really big games, and not. I guess I would understand if they came out and they were nervous and tentative and didn't want to make a mistake, but it didn't really look like that's what we're doing. Maybe aside from the Cedric kind of poor pass, who, as a guy who has won a European championship and wants to go to a big club, like, you can't do that. You have to be better than that, because you're playing big games kind of, every week. But I don't know. Going forward from that, though, I was a couple times I was a little bit frustrated with Djenepo. I just felt like he could have gotten rid of the ball several times and it was just holding on to it for too long, trying to create. And then I kind of just told myself, like, maybe I should just get off his back and let him try, because he's trying to do stuff, and that's what we need. We need a chance to be created, and it's not going to come from us, kind of holding the ball, near the halfway line and hoping that, Wofford just says, here, walk it in. So a little frustrated with him, but oh well. But I would say that the interchange, the play between our forwards and the ball movement, it wasn't fluid. It wasn't smooth. It was pretty sloppy and choppy. And it was a lot of almost losing possession and then kind of like having to lunge in and just retain possession and then try again. And we didn't look like a team that's comfortable playing like that. And I guess that speaks to what we are good at, which is winning the ball high up the pitch and having a shot relatively quickly. But at the same time, you got to kind of be able to do the other things too. You have to be able to pass the ball, and you have to be able to create space and with your movement. And you got to be able to do that when guys are sitting deep against you, because we're going to come into situations like that, especially probably against some of these other teams that we should theoretically be beating.
Yeah, I agree, and I also think that we don't play like a team that's desperate. We play like a team that's really unsure. I think that's more the word, because a lot of times, like, you're going to see, if you're in this relegation battle, you're seeing a team that's pretty desperate to find a result. I think we saw that against Arsenal. We were committed to getting something, but then we come out of those games and we're playing against teams that we need to compete against, not just hope that we get something from it. But, teams that we need to compete against, but we don't look to have that desperation in us to understand the actual magnitude of, we just kind of turn up and we try and do. It's like we revert back to some of the tendencies where, thankfully we've abandoned this whole three at the back, and like you say, with the lineup, we're looking more we're looking at going forward more than we used to, as opposed to letting the game come to us. We're actually trying to impact the game. But I think it's taken a bit of a change in the mindset, and that's not yet come fully. But there's times, especially in that first half, where we just didn't look like a team that was desperate to want to get anything out of it. I think that was the biggest worry, and I think that was the biggest change after halftime. Was we looked like a team that was desperate to fight for our lives finally.
Yeah, and I don't know what I was going to say, to be honest.
It's like I keep going back to it, but I mean, that was I think it was quite a pivotal sort of moment in our season, to at least, not take something from it, but at least show, because we need to start showing some desperation against everyone, not just, the big clubs. And it seems that hopefully now we're going to carry that over, because finally that second 45, it was just a complete U-turn from what the first 45 was. And I think like I posted a GIF, it's like, hopefully Ralph goes in and punches a wall and gets this team going.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that I'm around basketball enough. Our coaches, I'm around a lot of different coaching styles. And then, some work, some don't, things like this, things like that. But, sometimes it takes going into halftime and just, tearing the guys a new one, to get them to actually wake up and do something. And it's kind of like in basketball when you take a timeout, because, you're not getting a rebound, or you're making too many turnovers, and you have to come into the timeout and literally, it could be dead silent in the gym, but you have to take a go at someone just to get them going. And I think that was the halftime. That's what I'm hoping that the halftime looked like, was he just went in there and was an absolute, I don't know the word. I need to find a word that's PG rated.
Yeah. Well, I think we all kind of get it, so we'll just save it, because I don't know what the word would be either, the PG version. But yeah, I think that if Ralph doesn't go in there and do that, and doesn't just, sometimes you just have to call a player out and say, like, you need to do this. You are doing this. We need you to be better right here. And it's almost like that scene from The Office, The American Office. And I'm sorry to bring that up, because I know that's a huge cultural divide, but like like boom, roasted, you need to do this, boom, like that needs to happen sometimes. And it sucks, to have to do that. Cause I've coached high school sports and kids that are, 17, 18, getting ready to go play at university here. And it's like, sometimes they still have to be not brought down or crushed, but they have to be kind of shown like, you are good, but you're not giving the effort here. Like Obafemi, you need to stay on side. We have to track the runners when they're coming across. We have to communicate with one another. We can't just rely on McCarthy to come up with big saves, because he had a couple of times where he had to come up with those saves that maybe it wasn't even his fault. Like he shouldn't even be having to face shots in that situation. It's just the fact that the defense isn't getting the job done, and we're giving the ball away in a dangerous area, and now we're leading to McCarthy having to save us, which is not at all, what we want to rely on, because it's just not fair to let the goalkeeper go up against guys one-on-one and expect him to come up with saves,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Alex McCarthy yesterday was unbelievable. I mean, he's the reason we had a chance in the second half. And full credit to him for stepping up, because he's been one that's gotten some blame in the past, which is hence why Angus Gunn got that run of games. But it's absolutely full credit to him. He's why we had a chance in the second half. And sometimes you have to make big saves to give your team that opportunity.
Yep. I would say the only other kind of moment worth talking about in the first half, I think, was there was a point where Bertrand made a run. Redmond played an absolutely great ball to him. I think the cross is blocked or taken away from him, and then he gets back and kind of, I think just blocks the clearance, and it's it's great effort from him there. And I think that's what we needed. And it wasn't enough to swing the St. Mary's fans at halftime and keep them from kind of being upset, which I don't think it should have. I don't think that we were good enough in the first half. And I think that the fans that were there have the right to be frustrated. That said, I'm not sure the booing helps the players do anything. I think Carl Anker tweeted about it yesterday, and there were several other people after the game that were tweeting that the guys are having a hard time concentrating. They don't look comfortable at home, and that's, we want them to be comfortable, but I also understand the frustration the fans are facing. So it's a kind of tough situation. And when Ralph came out and said, that the team has to lift the fan base, it's the team's job, it's not the fan base's job at this point. The fans have done everything they can. It's now the team to do this. But and
that's a great point to make. Absolutely. I mean, from Ralph's perspective, because the fans have done, at this point, he understands if you saw the graphic that they posted up, and it was like his first 18 games versus his last 18 games. That graphic was quite telling, but I think that graphic explains exactly why the fans are booing throughout the match. And it's one of those, it's now down to the team, like he said, to lift the fans as opposed to the fans lifting the team. And that's a great point from him.
Yeah. And I think they showed it in the 43rd minute. And I think I grabbed it from your tweet just to bring it up here. Ralph's been in charge for 36 Premier League matches. His first 18 matches were 8 wins and a +1 goal difference. His last 18 matches were 2 wins and a -23 goal difference. Like, the fans have been there. The team is failing, right, to really make this happen. And when they put that up, it was 1-0 to Watford still going into halftime, and the fans were upset. I just think the positives that I looked at in the first half was the 10 minutes at the start I thought was okay. Cedric's pass aside, and then McCarthy. I usually try to come up with 3. I didn't come up with 3. The negatives I thought Ward-Prowse was particularly awful in the first half. I thought Cedric was not great. I thought the movement was bad, and then I just put literally everything else because I was having trouble finding the real positives there. And then we talked about the possession and stuff earlier, but 70% possession. We only managed 1 more shot than Watford, and they had more shots on target. When we go in down, and it's just not good enough. It's just one of those halves of football that we can't play like that at home, and we can't play like that and expect to win games. And somehow yesterday we did that. We did both of those things. We played that badly at home and managed to win the game in the end, even if it wasn't even if it wasn't the best of performances.
It always seems that whenever James Ward-Prowse ends up in the negatives, that he somehow finds a way to end up in the positive. Like, because he's been getting slated, and I tried to go back and find what I said about him in previous, like when I was on with Jake the other week, to figure out what I said so I don't sound so hypocritical. And saying that, because I can't remember if I've slated him or not, and I probably have and probably haven't. And
I think we probably did both. Like, it sounds.
Yeah, probably sounds like we've done both, like which is totally fine. But it always seems that if he's in the negative in the first 45, for some reason he always finds a way to end up in the positive, and it's like he's our son again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the midfield options we have, really, we have 3 options, and right now it looks like 2 of them are going to play. And Romeu, the least creative, is going to be the one that misses out. You kind of understand that because we're better. We need to find stuff going forward. We need to have the creativity going forward, and even if you don't think Ward-Prowse offers a lot of that, he definitely offers more of that than Romeu. And if anybody else is out there taking free kicks, it's probably Bertrand, maybe Cedric. And I think that's a big drop off. Maybe Redmond can hit one as well. But I don't think that's a great, it's a pretty big drop in terms of quality from set pieces and things like that. But we've said it 1,000 times that that's just not good enough. That's not a reason enough to have, a player on the pitch just because they can take set pieces. That's not acceptable. So it is a little bit baffling that he's there, but I think when you look at the options that are around, that's just going to be kind of what it is. But I mean, going in the second half, obviously we talked a little bit. It seems like Ralph kind of gave them a dressing down in the locker room, and they came out and looked a little better. Redmond had a good chance. His cross gets blocked. We had a couple other kind of like getting to the byline and trying to pull the ball back. They were intercepted, but it looked all right. My next note here has an expletive in it, so I'll have to like rephrase it. But I just said Ward-Prowse having a nightmare. Like we need him to be better if we're going to do better. Like we need something more when there's only 2 people in midfield to be able to do that. And that's when I grabbed Carl's tweet about. He says, "You understand the frustration of the home fans of St. Mary's, but Southampton players have zero confidence, and the constant boos don't help. The last 5 minutes, Redmond has had a throw and go past him when he's not looking. Højbjerg has slipped. They can't even concentrate, or they can't concentrate. So, I mean, you understand all of that, and we, I think, in the second half, got a lot better from the beginning. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe we got better slowly. But we, obviously needed to do something. But I'm missing a large gap of things in here that I didn't really write down stuff because I was mostly yelling at the TV. But was there any major difference that you noticed in the second half, or was there anything that you thought like, oh, there's a I guess a visible difference between how the team is either coming at Watford or what they're going on, or was it just kind of it became clearer to the guys as the game going on that like this is the time we have to do it, and if we don't do it now, then our season is basically, potentially down the drain. Even though it's very early, it was only November, but still.
Yeah, I think I think it's the latter of that one. I think they finally became more committed to the idea that because if we lost there, we're what 5 points, and then if Everton picks up somehow 3, that's 8 points away. And 8 points in that current form just was, it's not insurmountable, but it'd be a great escape. And yes, it's only December 1st, but I think the guys looked far more committed coming out of halftime than they did in the first half. I'll just go back to what I said before, saying, we have to look like a team. That's all I ask for, I think. I think fans have the right to boo, like Ralph has said. It's now time for the team to give the fans the performance that warrants something other than that. And I think he understands that they've not been. And I think that's a bit of I think the word would be contentious statement, just for the fact that means that he's directly criticizing the players, saying that we're not doing what we need to do on the pitch. And then I think in the second half, we looked far more desperate than we did in the first. And I'll keep saying that because that's all I'm asking for. If we look like we're actually giving it a go, that's what we need. I think, and I think I'm jumping ahead, but going to the substitutions, it was oddly weird to actually see Shane Long come on and me be like, maybe that's
the right answer.
Maybe, yeah, but in a weird way, not that he's going to score, but it's just he's someone that chases a lost cause, and I think that sometimes you need that, someone to come on, and that's just actually going to just work for work's sake, because he's going to chase down a ball that no one else is that maybe someone else is just going to give up on.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe that leads to a chance. Maybe that leads to, a corner that leads to the eventual goal and things like that. And it's just, sometimes you just need to pick out just someone that's willing to work, regardless of, their past form, how people feel about him. And it's one of those, he came on, I'm jumping ahead again, but sometimes that's the type of player you need. You just need someone that's going to come in and actually work. And I think that's kind of what he delivered. Because that's the player he is, unfortunately.
Well, I think later on in the match, as we got closer and closer to full time, it was Djenepo seemed to take some responsibility, and it's nice to see such a young player just kind of just feed me the ball and let me run at the defense. Let me try to create some stuff, and we're going to come to the spot where we have to talk about handballs and things like that here. But he created that opportunity. He didn't give up. He is the absolute lankiest person I've ever seen. And he's so young, and the haircut is,
it looks like an Eminem.
Yeah.
He looks like Eminem from the Marshall Mathers
days. Yes.
Not the yellow Eminem.
Yeah. I was like, he created that chance. He gets the ball in. I thought he was going to get called for a foul because it seemed like he went in 2-footed to kind of flick that ball over to Danny Ings, but Ings gets the goal, and I think from that point on, I was just, I don't know, I was feeling like we had a significant chance to kind of go and do this, and I was, that was the second kind of chance we had in quick kind of succession. Long had the second best chance of the game for us, directly in front of goal, and managed to get it blocked. We just couldn't get it over the line, and that was a little bit kind of frustrating. But once we got that goal, it felt like there were more goals to go get. And all I could do was hope that we were going to be able to do that. I didn't think that was going to come from that free kick, even though, we're all hoping, of course, like once he lines it up, that it's going to happen. But I guess we should pause before we go any further and just quickly discuss the handball. Like, we all remember a couple of seasons ago, Decore palming that ball or punching that ball into the net. We remember last season when I think it was after the Watford game that Charlie Austin had the big VAR rant. I think because Yoshida was called offside, even for interfering with play or whatever it was. But is this? I think I'll say it's by the letter of the law, the new law. Any handball in the build up to a goal means it's a handball and it has to be called off. But VAR didn't overturn it; it let it go. They admitted afterwards even that they made a mistake. But do you at all feel guilty about that? You feel like it's unjustified, or you feel like we earned that anyway?
Going back, I think initially I thought, because when the goal happened, I initially thought it was a handball. Just in the way that it developed, like in real time, it was like I didn't even think about it. I saw it happen, and I was like, that's a handball, and then it was in, and I was like, I just sat here, like just too elated by the goal to like even think about tweeting anything or anything saying, was there a handball in the middle of that? Or saying, not was it, because it was a definite handball. But it was one of those that there's no guilt. I can say with a clean conscience that there's no guilt felt.
Yeah. Well, given the way that things happen, and people were, some people were complaining online that, that could be the goal that relegates Watford. And it's like, well, you were already bottom of the table. There's a lot of football left to be played. Like, yeah, if you go down by a point, maybe that's the goal that you can point to and say, that's where we lost 2 points. And and that's it. But at the same time, like, things happen, and there are eventually probably going to be calls that go against us with VAR. We just have been on the positive side of it, and I don't know, man. Like I don't feel guilty about it. I just want to be aware that sometimes good things do happen, and we had to take advantage of it. Once you get that goal, then it's your responsibility to then go out and make sure that you take full advantage of it, and we did. To be fair, because eventually we get that free kick from Ward-Prowse that goes in, and it was just one of those things where when that happened, it was I don't know, it was a pretty good feeling. And I at that point I kind of stopped taking notes because I'm not sure what the heck is happening, or what I'm supposed to type. But it was just like, can we survive now the next couple of minutes? Can we? I guess when he scores, it's the 82nd minute. So there's 8 minutes plus stoppage time. And then I think they wound up with 6 minutes, and I had no idea where that came from, other than maybe a couple of guys going down. It looked like, I think at one point we had a Watford player get smacked in the face with a free kick, and he just went down very quickly and just kind of lay there. So maybe that's where some of that came from. But I don't know, man. I always question our ability to hang on to a lead, but we did it.
And like I said, going back to Genipo's thing, I mean, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the cliche phrase that we'll throw out there. And we were very lucky because they didn't even go back and look at it, did they? Like, there was no call to VAR or anything, so it was like we cold-blooded murder right there we got away with, and felt good.
Yeah, well, they look at everything, but I didn't pick up on the handball for. It took me a couple of replays to see it at all.
Oh, I saw it right away. I was like, because the way that the ball, when he cuts in, like, the way that the ball comes back into his path, I was like, you're just sitting there going, there's no way, like that, because it seemed physically like it looked like a FIFA play, just a glitch. But I was like, wait a minute, I was like, that had to be. And then they showed they showed the angle at the bottom, looking back into the pitch, and it was like, oh yeah, I mean, it was clear as day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's one of those you're just not even thinking about. And then moving ahead to Ward-Prowse, it's one of those. It's like he's going to get maybe 1 out of 10 hit right. I mean, that's kind of his success rate. It feels like 1 out of 10. Or what do they say in what's he say in Mighty Ducks? Fulton Reed. What's his success rate? That's Fulton. He is our Fulton Reed for all the ice hockey fans out there. I'm looking at the In That Number podcast, guys. But yeah, it was one of those. I mean, he finally got one at probably the most crucial time in our season.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the XG on that shot is 0.08, so it's not even the best chance that Ward-Prowse had in this game. But he made it count, and Foster does get a hand to it. You kind of would have expected him to save it and then time waste, but he did neither, and so we'll take that. Should we talk a little bit about the substitutions, just because we kind of skipped over them a little bit? And we talked about Long a little bit coming on for Obafemi. I was really upset when the first name that went up was Redmond, not because he had such a great game, but because I wanted Obafemi to come off, and then Obafemi came off immediately at the same time. So I guess that was all right. But bringing Redmond off when he's having not the greatest of games, not finding success for Buffal. Buffal has been great. There was that instance where he, I think, nutmegged the guy. Sorry, he kind of did a little flick around behind him and then nutmegged him. And just, kind of looking at that going like, I can't believe you did that to the man on television here. This has been televised internationally, and you just kind of ruined the man. I feel really, really guilty. But do you have any issue with Redmond being the one to come off, or is there somebody else you would have taken off instead?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as far as Ralph goes, I mean, Ralph has been criticized in the past for some of his substitutions, some of his changes. But I think it was a really bold move to take Redmond off, because he's one of those guys that I think people are looking for to be committed to helping us get out of a relegation battle. I think people are relying on his performance So I thought it was a really bold move, and I think that double change really sort of swayed the match, because Long comes on, he hits the crossbar after connecting with, because Buffal just has that cut back, and it just comes to Long's left foot as opposed to his right, so he can't swing across it. He's just kind of scuff it. I mean, and then Long can't get it over the line. It's cleared off the line, isn't it? So I think, people have criticized Ralph in the past for some of his changes, leaving it too late. He does it before the hour mark, which is, that's fairly early for him. Because you're expecting that change probably around, 65, 70 minutes. But that was a bold change to take Redmond off. And it was a really bold change to put Long on for Obafemi. But like I said, a little while ago, that it's, at that point we're in desperation mode, and who's going to be, the guy that's just going to work. And I think Long's that name. Obafemi will work, but no one's going to chase a lost cause like Long, and the two of them nearly connected for that goal. And I think those two changes in particular, I think, swayed the result in our favor. You can look at a whole bunch of, it's not one play, it's not one sort of thing that changes the game, but I think that really kind of helped us capitalize on some of the momentum that we had built up, leading up to that hour mark, and them too just kind of pushed us over the line, I think.
I think some people will be questioning that, only because we have Che Adams on the bench, who hasn't scored yet, but also has been kind of absent and been off the team sheet completely a couple of times. And then he doesn't get off the bench here. And when you look, you're down, you need a goal, you're at home, and you don't go to the guy you just paid big money for. People will start to wonder there, but I can't argue with what Long did yesterday, other than like he had, the biggest chance kind of other than Ings, and couldn't get it over the line, which is typical Shane Long, but did all of the other things that we would have needed, and really did help give Watford something to think about. And I just think that Shane Long is a kind of veteran, and sometimes you look at Ings and the way he has to play with Obafemi, and it kind of looks like Ings has to almost coach Obafemi along and tell him where to be, and that he's not. Sometimes when Ings gets the ball, Obafemi isn't where kind of Ings would expect him to be, and I think that stunts us going forward sometimes, especially when we're approaching a team that is going to sit deep and do those things, and where you need, where you need a player to kind of know his own, kind of know where to be and where to put himself to help the team out. And sometimes he just doesn't quite do that. So I think you bring Long in. He's not the best kind of player in between the lines and things like that, but he is smart. He is kind of a veteran and has picked up some things over the years. And so for him to do that and beyond, I guess that's fine. And then you have the last change where you go Valerie for Cedric. Cedric, I thought was not playing well, but it was a little bit odd to see just a right back for right back substitution. But right as soon as we make those changes, we score 2 goals and then we defend pretty well the rest of the game. Just I think all my notes say just like get it clear, like let's just do it, and we managed to do it. And I think it was Damari Gray, I think almost leveled it up for Watford, but finally the whistle blew and we got out of there with all 3 points, which I think we desperately needed.
Yeah, I think going back to the sub, I think the one that was interesting for me from a Watford standpoint was Deulofeu coming off. Mm-hmm. Gray had a chance, in added time, but I mean that's something that you can't really see, obviously, when you make the change. But I mean, I thought that was an interesting, just from what I had watched, just kind of the type of player he is and what they were doing. I thought they would have left him on, brought Gray on for someone else. But I mean, I thought that was an interesting change from a Watford standpoint. You'd have to talk to someone, far more versed in Watford lore for that one. But I thought that was an interesting change. He seemed to be quite disgruntled being the one coming off. If you go back and look, he just seemed like, hands up in the air and just, I thought that was an interesting change from them, because it's not like they were pressing us, but it was just, they just lost him off the pitch for like for like substitution. And you just never know what's going to happen. I thought that was an interesting change from our standpoint, looking at them. But other than that, yeah, Valeri for Cedric, that was bold as well. I mean, like I said, every change that Ralph made, had a bold move to it. And I think that's kind of what fans have been clamoring for, and he certainly delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you want to take a few minutes to answer some questions here?
Yeah. Can I go to the toilet first?
Yes, let's do that. I'm going to pause. I'm going to start my wife's coffee and stuff. So we'll be back in just a minute. We do have some questions from listeners. We've taken a bit of a break. We're back, and we'll answer them, or we'll try to answer them now, I guess. Where do you want to start? Are you looking at these, or do you have any ones that stand out to you that you want to do, or what do you want to do here?
I like let's see, which one did I like? I like the one that said, should we pin Redmond and Cedric off?
Yeah, so that came in from Steve Unit, who's on Twitter at Steve_Unit. And people can send in questions on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or if you are a member of the Patreon group, then you can do that as well, and you get priority for having your questions answered. Steve is one of those guys. So, even though he sends his question in via Twitter, that's what it is. So he says, should we bin Redmond and Cedric off for Buffal and Valerie in the next game, or keep them as game changers? What would be your starting kind of a lineup for the match against Norwich, which is going to be, as important as the Watford match?
It's I think it's an interesting question. I think a lot of people have asked for Buffal to be in the starting lineup, but we've seen him, a couple times in the starting lineup, seen him a couple times come off the bench. It seems his biggest impact is from the bench. I think he's a player that could or should be a starter, but I don't think he's like Batman. I don't think he's the starter we need at the minute. I think the only big change would be, Valeri, his biggest knock is his defense. Cedric just seems, I don't know if that's a one-off performance that he looks so poor, because he's been okay. He's not been great, but I think he's been better than Valeri when he was injured. Valeri was a bit and I think Cedric's kind of come back and taken his spot. I think that might be the only change I would make. I don't know if Cedric just is not in the right frame of mind or whatever, but I think that could be the only change I would make. I think we go with the same lineup at Norwich, but I think Valeri might be the only change, considering that Cedric was yanked as he was.
Yeah. I think that Cedric has been, that interview he gave over the international break, I think, where he came out and said, he's looking to move away and whatever. I think that was, for a lot of fans who were kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt, that was it. And then his performances since then have been terrible. And so I think people were upset to see him in the lineup at all yesterday. And, the fact that the Valerie comes in and then we wind up winning and Cedric plays so poorly, almost gives away a goal to open the game. Like, that's, maybe this is the time to make that switch, but we'll have to see. In terms of Buffal for Redmond, I think Redmond still needs to be in the starting lineup. And he may not like it as much, but if we're going to stay with the same formation, maybe you have Buffal and Djenepo, playing just behind Redmond and Ings, and you just have Redmond kind of play up top with Ings and see if he can, get into the habit of finding a chance or creating a chance, or give him maybe a little bit more freedom and see how that works. Especially if we're not going to be using Adams, and that way it's more Buffal for Obafemi. And then Redmond kind of moves up to where Obafemi was playing. But that's where I would go. At the same time, though, Buffal coming off the bench, does great things, and it's not always that's not always replicated if you start the game. Not that he can't do that, but it seems like he's one of those guys that does it. And you would say, Djenepo started the game, didn't look great the whole time, but eventually as the game wore on, was ultimately the creative force that kind of got us back in the game. And you'd see him and Buffal. That's a lot of trickery and a lot for defenders to have to think about if they're on either side of the pitch, kind of coming at you, and either one of those guys can put in a cross, can create a chance kind of out of nothing, and that's what we're kind of lacking. So I would take that late on in a game. If it means that Buffal has to come on late, fine. If it means that he starts and just stays on, that's fine too. Like I'm up for any sort of that, anything like that. Steve sends in another question. He says, what sort of activity do you think we can expect in January, given our current position? And the truth is like, I'm not sure. You could argue for center back. You could argue for perhaps another midfielder, maybe number 10, somebody that can really make that 4-2-2-2 really work. Somebody maybe to play alongside Højbjerg or maybe even replace him in some instances. But I'm not sure what we would expect given kind of where we're at. I think we have to sell guys first, and I think that's ultimately going to be the deciding factor for anything.
Yeah, I think it's not only selling people, but it's also the fact that we don't know what Gal's doing. We don't know what investment he's going to, what he intends on doing, if any. So I think our activity is reliant on, yes, selling people, and then also what Gal's doing. But if we were to, I think I agree. I think that he has found a center back pairing that just works. But I think they could, I think it needs some help still, because I don't think we're going to be relying on Jack Stevens. I hope we're not. I mean, that's a big reliance, a big expectation that he's going to, not do something to, completely mess up. Mm-hmm. So I think that the only activity that I think, if we shore up the defense, because that's been the biggest question, especially based off that stat being a -23 entering yesterday, over the last 18, that is worrying. And I mean, that's about the only thing you can say. It's either going to be defense. I don't think we're going to add anything to our attack. Maybe midfield. I think our midfield and our defense are probably our two weakest points. But it's just January, you have to spend money because everything in January is far more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely.
And I think Chris, the guy that we always talk about, the one, the CHRS00, he makes all the WWE references. And he said, midway through the match, he says, "Look, I'm not saying we should recall Hote, Lamina, and Creo, but I'm genuinely not sure we'd be any worse with them in the side, and they're awful."
Yeah, he did say that. I remember seeing that yesterday. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think maybe that's an option. I think we just need to be able to give Ralph options. I think Ralph doesn't really have many options off the bench. I think I'm not going to say Shea Adams is a lost cause for us this season, but I don't see him coming in and making the impact that we really need. I'd love to be wrong about that, because I think he's probably in a worse place right now than he was, 2 or 3 months ago when he was having a decent preseason. It's preseason, but mm-hmm. I think at this point, Ralph needs options, and as far as it goes, putting on Long yesterday was a pretty desperate option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. One about our defense. I mean, what would you do? Caroline Emerson, who's at Soft Sally Saint on Twitter, says, "Why is Yoshi not playing? He's an experienced defender and plays successfully for his country. I thought he should have played today, so he thought should have played on Saturday." I mean, would you have him in for Stevens, or is that? I mean, it's kind of, I think at this point, I think you have Bednarak and then you have everybody else in terms of the other defenders that are there. I mean, if I'm correct in saying Danzo didn't even make the bench yesterday, is that
yeah, right? He wasn't even there. I don't foresee him making the bench anytime soon either.
And so, I mean, we spent money, we've done these things, and we still wind up with largely the same group of guys, and I think that just speaks to what we've done in the transfer window and continuing to miss, and what Ralph is seeing in the guys, and it's not great. I think Yoshida is the kind of the veteran leadership on the team, and I think he has a role to play, and it might not be on the pitch all of the time. It might be there to watch the game and talk to the guys and kind of coach them along at halftime or whatever. But I maybe we won't see him play all that much, and it's kind of weird because I think he was playing pretty well. He is playing well for Japan, but that's a completely different kind of it's a different kind of game. It's different than what we're up against here in the Premier League. And the truth is he's probably aging out a little bit and getting to the point where he's not going to be, as reliable and when maybe what we want to build our team around. And I think at this point you pick a couple of center backs and you just stick with them and give them the time and let them make mistakes together, but learn and grow together. And that'll be it, because we're going to need a center back pairing for the future, because we've tried now to buy Vestergaard. We've tried now to buy Danzo. We've brought in these guys and going all the way back to Hoot, and we just haven't had a center back there that's worth it. And if you're going to pay big money for a center back, we're not going to, and that's just kind of, I guess, the way it goes. So I do miss kind of seeing Yoshida out there. I like Yoshida. I think he's a great part of the club, but I'm not sure he's going to come in and be there for Stevens, even though Stevens I felt did make a mistake for that goal, but.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, but I also think that, what do you change? Like we talk about Yoshida and his experience, his ability to, be that sort of veteran leadership. He's quite good, as well as, kind of being like a strong part of the club, similar to like Højbjerg. They're very, kind of character guys in a way, like they'll trot them out versus anyone else. After a loss, things like that. But like, what are you going to get from Yoshida that you aren't getting, from Stevens? They're both fairly mistake prone. They'll switch off and they'll be, fought for a goal or fought for a chance. So, I mean, and like you said, I think he's starting to age out just a tiny bit. But I think Ralph is trying to find a pairing that he can use week in and week out, or, match in, match out, I guess. Since we're getting to the 2 matches per week here in the busy season. Mm-hmm. So I think he's trying to find and stick with a pairing that he can expect, at least know what he's going to get from. And I think Stevens and Bednarik are at least showing that they can, go out there and be okay. And I think that's, at this point, that's what we're having to hope for. We're not going to get a Van Dijk type performance from either of them. But, that's the level we're at is the level we're at. And I think he's not going to make a change off the back of a win. Short week, yes, but I don't think there's going to be a huge change in that pairing in the foreseeable, unfortunately, for Yoshida.
Yeah. I think we'll see largely the same backline, maybe bar Valerie for Cedric. Maybe that happens, but can't imagine a lot changing back there. And maybe you do see a change in midfield just because of the work rate that Ralph expects, and one of those guys will get a break, but I can't imagine a lot of it. And maybe out wide, maybe you can see Boufal start for Djenepo, and then potentially Djenepo come on as a sub instead. Like maybe just see that switch over, but we'll see. So we did have some questions come in late on Instagram from Al Capone 156, and he asked about Redmond and Boufal, which we talked about, and before I saw his question. And then he has one here that says, is it just the pressure and atmosphere at St. Mary's that's causing us to look so lifeless and uninspired after playing so intensely at Arsenal? The first half was Everton all over again, so content to pass backwards instinctively. And we talked about it a little bit, but I mean, are we going to go with the kind of narrative that it is the team's job to figure out a way through it? Or do you because that seems to be what Ralph has kind of said, is they have to prove it to the fans. The fans have come out and sat through the cold and seen some pretty awful football against teams that we would expect to be doing better than that against. And then, maybe they got a little bit back yesterday, but it's 22 minutes of football that was worth watching, I think, for the most part from Saints at home. So, somebody who sees that, or is it the fans' job to get off their back, or do we still think that it's kind of Ralph's job and the players' job to kind of win the fans back over?
Oh yeah, massively. It's the players' job. We're not the ones down on the pitch doing the play-in. I mean, I think the crowd has a tremendous impact. It has a good place in the game. I mean, without the crowd, it's a completely different beast. Premier League can't be what it is. but I think it's down to the players to show that desperation that they're willing to put in, and that doesn't come from the fans giving them support. It doesn't come from this or that. It starts with them. I mean, it's up to them to make that change. It's up to them to commit to doing what Ralph wants, whether it's pressing, whether it's defending, just a singular thing down the left, down the right, just a role that they're going to do. It's all down to them. It has nothing to do with fans. I mean, fans can stay on their back if they want. They can get off their back. I don't think there's a right yes or wrong there. But it's the only definite is it's down to the players. I mean, the fans can't go out there and play the match for them. They're the ones that have to make the impact with what they do, the decisions they make. So it's completely on the players more than the fans.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can't ask the fans to not be upset, knowing that it doesn't help the players. I mean, it's really, really hard. If you've ever been in a situation where somebody's like yelled at you about something, about not doing something right, and then as you're trying to fix it, they just continuously yell at you more and more and more. Like, it doesn't make it any easier to do the thing. But sometimes it's just the way it goes, and you gotta get all the way through that, and you'll come out better on the other side. At least, that's how I was raised, and I don't know if that's right or wrong, but, we'll figure out really quickly if my mom gets this far into the show, because I'll get a text message, I'm sure. My dad does not listen, probably. I don't think so. He won't worry about it. Anyway, I don't know. Do you see anything else we want to answer here? Are we good? I feel like we've done quite a bit here, and there's a lot to chew over. I mean, this is the first time we've had a win to talk about, and maybe this isn't maybe it's not the celebratory podcast that we would have hoped for, but I think there's still a job to do, right? Like, we still have things we have to accomplish, and I'm glad we got the monkey off our back at home, but we have to do it again on Wednesday. Otherwise it kind of puts us right back in the same situation. Yeah,
absolutely. I think coming back down to some of these little questions that have been put at the bottom, are just kind of like screen captures, why is Ralph not playing Che? There's a lot, I got a lot of response yesterday from people coming in on Twitter saying, Ralph's lost the dressing room, things like that. They're not playing for him, especially after that tweet, the difference between the 2-18 matches. And it's like, it'll be interesting to see. I think every match we have to take at its value. I don't think we can look back at the Watford match on, Wednesday, whenever we play, and say, we have to do exactly what we did then. We did, great for 24 minutes. I think every match has to be looked at individually. It's very similar to what they say about like the NFL, that it's all like one game sample sizes, and I think that's what we have to take every match at. And that's why I was saying, that's why when I tweeted the whole, if you were expecting us to play like we did at Arsenal, you'd be severely disappointed. Not just for the fact that taking confidence or things like that. It's like, take aspects from that performance, but at the end of the day, where we are at, I don't think we can look at performances carrying over, things like that. I think we can take aspects from it, but I don't think we can take the entire performance, because every game it's so valuable at this point that it's very similar to the NFL in that we just have to look at it as one game sample sizes each week. Mm-hmm. Norwich is going to be completely different than Watford was. They're going to set up completely different, play a different style, and it's just how we react to it on the day. But the only thing that I pretty much ask for is that we look like we're playing as a team that's desperate to get out of a relegation battle. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of the only thing, looking down these questions, do you think we'll stay up the season? It's like, I don't even think we can look at it that far ahead. It's not, the fact that we can look at the table and see we're in the relegation zone, but it's just the fact that we have to take it literally with this group. We can't look 2 or 3 games ahead. We have to look, almost half at a time. Mm-hmm. Because my friend Andrew, who always loves getting a shout out, he was like, we can't play 2 45 minutes back to back. Like, right. It's like, why can't we play 90 minutes? And I think, like I'm saying, we just can't look at 2 games at a time and say, we're going to carry this over, we're going to carry this over. We literally have to treat every game as its own, which is going to be really frustrating. because I mean, you look at a couple of games, it's like, oh, we can win this one, we should win this one, we might drop points here, but it's like we have to look at every game individually at this point, because we just don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what team's going to turn up.
Yeah, well, I think it just makes it really hard to answer questions like this last one here from Jacob Sobotka, I think, on Twitter. It says, Ralph seems to have the ship turning around. We look like to be gaining momentum. If we beat Norwich next week, can you see the team potentially comfortably avoiding relegation, finishing near mid-table, or is that all too presumptuous at this point? I think like it just depends. Like if we play like we did in the last 20 minutes for the majority of the time, like the more we play like that, or the more we play like we did against Arsenal, the further up the table we will be. But it's impossible to predict at this point how the team is going to show up and how the team is going to come out and what it's going to take for them to kick into gear each and every game. And some games they just don't do it at all. And then other games it takes the other team hitting the post or going ahead for them to do it. Or sometimes it's halftime that does it. And there doesn't seem to be, at least right now, that I've seen, and it sounds like you agree, like it's difficult to find any sort of just key to the game. If we can just unlock this one thing, that will make us, that's what we do. And that will push us forward and get us to do the things that we need to do to win football games. Because right now it's just impossible to kind of pin that down. There doesn't seem to be a pattern, which is, I think, frustrating for me, as someone, and for you as well, probably for people who need to talk and write about this stuff. It's hard to find the narrative, really, besides, the fans are upset and they have a right to be.
That's exactly, that's the perfect way to describe it. Is, it's hard to find, if you were to go back, if you were to try and put the story of Southampton season so far, all you're going to be able to get is, we've dropped points and the fans are upset. Some people want Ralph out, some people want him in, some people don't like his tactics, but it's like, you just week to week, game by game, it's so different, because we're just trying to do so many different things that it is hard to find the narrative, other than the ones that we've mentioned, the fans and, things like that. But I think if you look back, I think the hard part is if you look at like City, how we played against City, how we played against, Everton, how we played against Arsenal, how we played against Watford, it's like, it's so tough to find consistency through each performance, and kind of what he's asking here, Ralph seems to be having, seems to have turned the ship around a bit, we're gaining momentum. It's like, yeah, we can say that it looks like we're gaining momentum, but it's like we could come out on Wednesday and be completely different. And it's like, you can't predict anything with this team, which is largely frustrating, but it's also, that's what sport is. And that's what's so great. That's why you tune in each week.
Yeah.
Because we just never know. It's so random.
Yeah. That's why the games are played, right? Like, it's not played on paper. You got to go out and do it. And, nobody would have predicted Norwich and Arsenal to draw, really, other than Arsenal struggling. But like, there are lots of things that happen each and every week. Like, as we're talking, as you're saying this, Grealish just scored against United, and put Villa up 1-0. So, there are things that happen, and you got to play the games. And in the long run, I think, the table will tell the truth for the most part. Over the course of a 38 game season, we'll see. But Alan, it's been great. It's been nice to have you back on and get to chat with you. And
it's always great to come on and have some laughs, because we definitely do that. And it's good to sometimes. I feel like I'm a good perspective person because I'm around sports so much, and it's like, and a lot of people are as well. A lot of people can say that, but it's like, it's one of those, I'm a good perspective guy, because I try and not take it too serious, and maybe life changing if we go down, but it may feel life changing, but it's, at the end of the day, club's still going to be there, and I'll still be tuning in.
Yeah, and I'm sure for some people life will get more difficult if we go down in terms of being able to watch and enjoy the team as much as they can or are able to now. I being one of those people. But it won't end forever. Like, there will be other things that will go on. So hopefully the team just does enough to stay up and stay up in the Premier League and not just stay up, but move on and try to tackle some other things and be successful in ways that will please the fan base and play some I guess, some aesthetically pleasing football for everybody to enjoy, because that's a big part of what we look for as a fan base. But so if people want to follow you, they can do that on Twitter at @A_Gunsy. You're also on Twitter with St. Mary's Musings at St. Mary's Musings. And the link to the website is in the show notes. And yeah, man, it's been a blast, and I'll send over the schedule so you can maybe get yourself on later in the season as well.
Yeah, sounds good. And I went back and looked, and Fulton Reed, 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5.
1 out of 5. He's our James Ward-Prowse. 1 out of 5.
That's it, man. We'll keep lining him up, man. Keep getting tackled outside the box. We'll just pump him in. It'll be fine.
We'll just wait for that 1 out of 5 there.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right, we'll see you in a bit.
That does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Alan Gunn. Thanks for joining on such short notice. You've been officially promoted to the first team, but keep working hard or we will demote you right back to the under-23s. Be called up for fill-in duty without much hesitation, because I'm a ruthless a-hole, and honestly, I'll just forget to call you. So anyway, you can follow Alan at @A_Gunsy. You can follow St. Mary's Musings at St. Mary's Musings, and the link to the St. Mary's Musings website is in the show notes below as well. If you're on social media and you want to get in touch with this show, you can do that at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. You can get links to all those and more, including the weekly newsletter that comes out each and every Friday morning, UK time, of course, at southamptondelivery.com. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. Special thanks to everybody over at patreon.com/SFC Delivery for supporting the show. Without your support, the show would not go on. You get a few extra perks, like having priority for getting your questions answered, and a couple of other extra episodes and things like that per month. But that is it. So if you can hear some background noise, it's okay. Stick with me for just a second. The logo for the show is done by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram, and the official partner page of the show is the Southampton page. You can follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for all your Southampton FC news and needs. They will keep you up to date with everything that is going on, and they'll make you laugh along the way, especially if you're not a fan of James Ward-Prowse. Sorry. Anyway, that same James Ward-Prowse, that was Team of the Week, scored the winner, all that stuff. Go away. That was probably really rude. Of course, you can subscribe, rate, and review in whatever podcast app you currently listen to, or there are links at southamptondelivery.com, as I said before. If you would like to leave a review, that is very, very helpful. It helps other people find out about the show. It helps them know what other Saints fans think about it as well, which is always encouraging. Unless, of course, you're a 1 or 2 star reviewer, then kindly don't. Just thanks. And that about wraps it up for this week. Of course, we'll be back next week to look back on both the Norwich and the Newcastle game, 2 big matches coming up for Saints. And hopefully we have more positives to talk about, more points to talk about, and hopefully some improved performances as well. So with all that said, thanks for listening. And until next time, remember that together we march on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't know what I was going to say, to be honest.